Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Parrott from Village of Lincolnwood, Illinois. He has almost 37 years experience in law enforcement. He has a master's degree in business law, an undergraduate degree in law enforcement administration. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy and a graduate of the Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command. He is also a father of, what did you say, three?
Yep, three adult
Three,
children.
three
Now,
children, adult children. Welcome to the show, Chief Parrott. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to toss in, that you are a father of three kids because right before we hit record, you were talking about how proud you are of them and how proud you are that you were able to be a dad to three kids that are successful. So I wanted to toss that in there because I think sometimes we talk so much about what we do professionally, but it was really refreshing to hear you talk about how proud you were to be a dad. So
Yeah, no, I am. I am. They're all great kids. They're kids to me. They'll always be kids, but they're grown adults and they are doing what they enjoy to do. And, they have great lives ahead of themselves and they're working at their careers. And I think that's what, all parents strive for is to see their kids get out on their own and make life, for them. And
yeah.
then we can kind of sit back and watch and enjoy that. And then, guide them through as they get older. And we have, obviously parents being older than their kids, we can take those life experiences and hopefully guide them as they see things come along, whether it's, marriage and they have kids and we can just guide them through the things that we've seen over our lives.
Yeah, well, I think it's also a reminder to all of us that there are two sides of the coin. There's our professional life, and of course, we want to get to the end of our career and we want to look back and we want to be proud of the work that we did and the impact that we had professionally. But then we also want to get to the end of this thing and look back on our personal lives and be proud of what we did there too, whether that means you're a parent or not. Maybe you're just a really good kid, to your parents, or, maybe you're a really good friend, or you had, meaningful relationships, or maybe it does mean that you were a great dad or a mom. And I think that we have to remember that, yes, there are things to strive for that we want to be proud of professionally, but how can we also strive to be proud of the things we do in our personal lives?
That's true. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, like not everybody has kids and people dedicate their, outside their work life to whether it be to their other family members, cousins. I've seen so many different varieties of law enforcement officers that get involved in families
Mhm.
outside of work, or even just do more philanthropic things to do that they find a cause in, and that's kind of their out from work life. And whatever I guess whatever you pick to do, you want to try to do it well and make it meaningful and reflect on that and help that between balancing that and your work life to just have successful outcomes. And,
Yeah.
one thing with, obviously, as you said, I've been doing this for a little bit of time. The different things you see, not just at work, but outside of work and just the tons of success and happiness, but a lot of, unfortunately, some struggles people that have and that you learn from seeing those other struggles or you're involved in some yourself, but bringing and learning and moving forward and just trying to make life the best that it can be. And as you make it a big topic of having wellness and resilience, as a law enforcement officer, it's important for us to recognize the different things that everybody goes through in life and the cycle of life. And not everybody is blessed to wake up and have a great day. And then you could have a great day as a law enforcement officer, but you're dealing with somebody that's, dealing with a tragedy that you have to work through and see and help them through. And whatever that call may be. And those things have an impact on law enforcement because we do see things that other people, the general public, don't see on a day-to-day basis. I think with technology, how we've seen that evolve. I think we're more people that are not experiencing real life trauma that law enforcement officers see. They're watching it on video for sure. I think that that's more readily available, and I think that that has an impact for a lot of people watching that type of those types of videos, just encounters, and I think it impacts them. I think some people learn tremendously from it, and I think some don't. I think those add to potentially add to some anxiety for people that we see when we go to calls, because I've seen that now. And everybody's walking around with a smartphone, and they're, you'll go to a call, and they'll either want to record the officer, or they want to show the officer something that they saw, whether they're reporting a crime, or they want to report something. Could be a family conflict, but everybody's glued to their phone, so to speak. So I think that has an impact that didn't have an impact before. Years ago when I first became a policeman, you weren't watching video of everything, and the video we did have access to was very poor quality. So there was not this, officers were not wearing body cameras. Very few cars, some cars had in-car cameras, but they weren't the best. And then, the video surveillance that were attached to buildings didn't capture much. So really, our encounters when I first became a policeman was all word of mouth, face to face. You have to verify everything, and witnesses or just people making reports. Stories varied, things couldn't be verified. The reason I'm kind of talking about this is I think it's a lifestyle change that has taken place drastically of how we've encountered individuals in law enforcement, and how that's evolved over the years. And now everything is on video that we do. And everybody wants to show us video to support their stance on something, or again, making a report with a police officer. So those are just things that to me, that stands out as one of the most significant things, how we've evolved as a society, and what a law enforcement has to deal with. So,
Yeah.
which means we have to deal with it.
Right. I think that, and what kind of comes up in my mind is that there's an evolution of everything always, right? Things are always changing, things are always evolving. And I think that it could be good and bad, right? And you can look at the addition of stressors for what you just described 100%. Like I could see how that could add more hesitancy, but I also could see the other side of things, that now, like, things can be verified, and it could be helpful for you guys too, to prove your case of like, hey, we did the right thing, right? So there's like two sides of that coin. Um, but I think that when we look at evolution and things that are always, changing and in flux, it's how do we adapt to it, and how can we understand the good and the bad that comes with everything, and then how can we better equip ourselves for the things that are more challenging. And so you brought up the word resiliency, because everything in life is hard, right? It's like there's everything. I don't know anyone who's gone through anything in this life that didn't say it was hard. Raising kids, hard. Careers, going to school, learning a new sport or learning anything new. All these things are hard. But how do we become more resilient to the things that are hard? How can we do more hard things so that we know we can do more hard things? And then how can we grow and become better versions of ourselves in spite of or because of those hard things, right? And so my question for you is, what do you think the definition of resiliency is? And how do you think that people can, understanding the stressors that come with your profession specifically, how can they better equip themselves to be more resilient?
Well, good question. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, just as adapting and change, and being able to adapt to those changes. I think as a race, humans are, we're very resilient in the sense of no matter what situation is thrown at us, we can make a choice and overcome whatever's thrown at us, I think. Now, is everybody capable of doing that? No, but I think we have the ability to do it. And as time goes on, we see people. I've always been fascinated when I look at, the different decades of how we grow as a person, and how we mature through life, and the things, like you said, there's a lot of hardships that we face, and we face them in different stages of life. Some of it's natural, some of it's not natural, but I think how we adapt and get over those, and then take those experiences and kind of reflect on those, and you hang on to them. And if somebody else is going through something that a struggle that maybe you're familiar with or you've seen, and you can help that other person out. I think that's great. I think that is something that, because we learn from, I mean, the old saying, we learn from our mistakes, or we learn from just observing or going through something. It doesn't matter what it is. We can take that and we can use that to just not only make ourselves better, but hopefully make somebody else better, where they don't have to go through that same exact mistake to become better. And I know that this is, we're talking about um, a lot of different things that we can be exposed to, but the healthy mind and the healthy body definitely helps. I mean, I know as a young policeman, I mean, I always enjoyed running, but I wasn't, it wasn't every day. I mean, I got better at it to try to maintain my physical health. Um, and I know that that's a topic of just mental well-being is kind of tied to physical well-being. And I've seen some officers over my career that were just, fanatics about physical health, eating, everything just very structured, very regimented. And then others that were just kind of more like me, where we did physical stuff, worked out, tried to take care of ourselves, but we also like to have fun. And then there were others that just did not take care of themselves at all.
Mm.
And you can imagine, not everybody had a bad outcome that didn't take care of themselves, but the ones that had probably more significant issues with their physical attributes, or even just mental health issues, you could see there's definitely a pattern there, or also I would say a risk factor. So, maintaining your health and trying to stay somewhat in shape. Now, com, you know, compiling your ability to want to do that, and then maintain, you know, a family relationship with your family when you're not working, and doing everything, and everything that goes on, whether it's getting married, having kids, or not. But just, there's things that obviously interfere with your ability to completely, you're going to have to work around. Everybody has to try to schedule and maintain themselves as best they can. So work life, especially being a police officer, we don't have the best work schedule when you're a street officer working a patrol shift. um, Especially, I mean, patrol, and I reflect back. I mean, patrol is the backbone of every police department. No police department can function without a patrol division. They are the essential first responders to everything. They have to work. They're working 24/7, 365. Um, the those officers have to be able to adapt and take care of themselves in their off hours. And I know there's been extensive studies on what's best. Is it the 8-hour shift? Is it the 10-hour shift? Is it the 12-hour shift? There's pros and cons to all of those. What's better for you? Should you be on a set day off key pattern, or should you be able to pick your days off, or have set days off based on seniority? All things have positives, and all things, there's positive and negatives to anything. It's just finding that right balance. And also, there's a lot of, every police department is a little bit, I mean, we're all the same in what we do, but each department has its own culture. So you want to kind of respect the culture and try to figure out what works best for that department, and go from there. But again, the having an officer being able to like stay focused when they're at work. I mean, I remember. I mean, it wasn't exactly a pleasurable memory, but I remember, working midnights for, and you're on midnights. It's January. It's about, I don't know, 15 below outside. You don't want to get out of your car. You don't want to stop a car. You don't want to really do anything other than stay warm, but you don't want to turn the heat up too much. Otherwise, you might fall asleep if you park somewhere. So, I mean, and you laugh, but that's what's going through your mind, and you're trying to stay focused, because if a call comes out, and it would happen where an emergency call would come out, and then you have to go from being not wanting to get out of your car, struggling to maybe stay awake. And now you're going from that to an emergency call where you have to be 100% focused. And the reason I say that all kind of balances with how are you preparing yourself when you come to work, and when you leave work, to basically, you know, get good sleep. Don't have, you don't want to have a short sleep cycle. You want to have a good sleep cycle, and maintain your health. And back then, I don't think I realized that and appreciated it as much as I do now, now that I'm older. And, I do value, if I can get 7 hours of sleep, that's a great night
Mhm.
at my age. But, those are things that are super important for your mind and body. And one thing I would say that I learned a lot, even though it was kind of later in my career, I was, when I went to the FBI National Academy, there's a huge focus on physical fitness. And I enjoyed that tremendously. It was almost, I would kind of reflect it as like you're away, it's almost like being at college again, where you're living at the FBI Academy, you're being paid to be there. So it's better than college because you're getting your salary
Mhm.
and they're feeding you and they're putting you through all these classes, but they're putting you through rigorous physical fitness. And, you have to obviously be somewhat in good physical condition to go. Um, but you feel it's amazing. It's just gives you a whole new outlook or a refresher on just maintaining good physical health, and I would say that for a while after the academy, which I went in 2012, so it's been a little bit of time, maintained it for a while. I would say that the older I got, I can't maintain the physical fitness standards that I used to, for sure, just because of, just aches and pains. But I would say that just it's such a refreshing thing to have done that. And not only, I'm not talking about just the friendships and the classes I went to and just being, I mean, it was a struggle. I know when I went, I mean, I was away from home for 10 weeks and I was in my 40s and, my wife's home with three kids and, she's, I'm like, I'm gone for 10 weeks. I was actually worried. I'm like, I don't know if my wife gets too used to this. I may not, after 10 weeks, she may be like, you know what, we don't want you back in the house. But that didn't happen, but obviously, but I really, you know, this career has been, I've given a lot to it. I still want to give a lot to it as long as I can. And so I'm still enjoying waking up every day and doing this, but I definitely think that there's a mental health component of, you know, making sure you enjoy coming to work every day. And not everybody can do that. I mean, again, you get sidetracked and, um, if you're and that's when things happen, when you're sidetracked. I
Yeah.
feel like if you're sidetracked with something and you come to work, um, and you can't focus and then you're going to an emergency call, you potentially can make not the best decision.
Yeah. I
And
think I think mindset is everything. And you mentioned this a couple times. So I wanted to kind of circle back to that because, obviously, yes, physical fitness is important. Yes, your nutrition is important. Yes, like financial wellness is important. We know that there's a lot of different methods and modalities and pillars, if you will, of wellness that are really important. There's a quote that always stuck with me, and it said that the most important training is between your ears. And I really liked that a lot because I think we forget about it. And you said it a couple times, mental training, like mental health, resiliency, all these things. If you if you can't show up and make effective decisions, if you can't show up and be good mentally, how are you expected to perform in any other aspect of your life or your career? And I truly believe, especially when it comes to resiliency, your brain is going to tell you things, right? So if your brain, like, let's just put this in a really simple example. If you're doing a really hard workout and your mind is telling you you can't do it, you're right. You're never going to be able to do it. If you're waking up every day and like you hate going to work, it's not going to get better. You're going to continue to hate going to work. You have to train your mind to understand that you are resilient and strong enough to do these things. You have to convince yourself that you can do hard things. So if you're doing that hard workout, yes, you can. You have to train your brain to say, I can do this. And maybe you can't do it today, but you have to have the training that is convincing yourself that you can do hard things.
mhm,
Same thing, like maybe you are having a hard time, but instead of you waking up every day being like, I hate to go to work, be like, I get to go to work. Train yourself to look for the positive because that is what's going to, I think, set you up for long-term success, longevity. That's going to help you through burnout. And of course, all the other things matter too. But if you have a weak mindset or a negative mindset, you're never, ever going to be able to push through the hard things. And you explained a lot of those hard things. There are really hard realities of your career, harder than any other career in the world, in my opinion. You guys have to deal with the hardest things, shift work, the types of calls that you see. If you are going to get through those things, you have to have a healthy and positive mindset.
You do, you do. That being said, you know, I think, when officers are, and I've hired a lot of officers, and they're young and they're fresh, and we look. That's something we look at, obviously, and then all officers get, they get a psychological assessment to make sure that they are of healthy mind. That's something we do. But I always was kind of interested in when I see officers start out and then they, hit different periods in their career, 3, 5, the 8 to 10 year, the 15 year, where how they develop. You know what I mean? That's something to just watch how they develop. And as I said earlier, I was talking a little bit about watching officers, super physically fit, super, regimented. Others that, have to make adjustments. They're normal. They still do some fitness, but, they kind of spread the wealth, so to speak. And then the other ones that just really don't do, any fitness. They obviously become maybe use the term not in the best of health, in terms of, what they eat or how their lifestyle is and do they smoke. And but I think you talk about, yes, being strong and being able to overcome, and that helps for sure. That's,
Mhm.
Keeps you on the mark when it comes to being a law enforcement officer. But I think it's important too, for at least I look at this when I talk to my officers, especially individually and in private. I'm like, hey, how you doing? What, you got anything going on? You don't, and I go, like, you don't have to tell me. I don't, but if you need something, there's resources out for you to get that. We have resources available for you. And it's important that they have, that they want to do that. Officers will really, I mean, yes, do I think we're in a better um, state of mind, so to speak, where it's more acceptable for officers to get peer support? If they need some assistance, reaching out, whatever it may be, professional mental health. I think that is something that is way more accepting than it was when I first became a policeman. But it's something that police officers are very good at keeping things to themselves. They, especially things that they might think of as show a sign of weakness.
Mhm.
I think that's something, and getting back to, getting over the hump and trying to better yourself. That's, they have to want to do it. They also might be stuck in a rut, and how do we get them out of that rut? And, we unfortunately, there, wasn't us. There was a town, in, Illinois, not far from us, maybe probably about 40, 45 minute, um, the officer committed suicide, about 2 weeks ago. And when I talked to that chief, because we're friends, and I was like, hey, I got to ask, because he was a pretty young officer. I go, can I ask this question? I go, was it over a relationship? And he's like, yeah, we believe it was. And I said, that's a sad truth. That's one of the more common difficulties that, why officers take their lives, that they just have a relationship that falls apart. And after that happened, I sent out an email, I send emails to all my staff on Fridays. And I just put in there a whole thing about, like, and my point of this was just like, if there's something bothering you, don't be ashamed to reach out. You surely don't have to come to me, but there's avenues for you to reach out. But the one thing I wanted to kind of mention is, if you, I put in there, I'm like, if you're coming to work and you're not focused on work and you're distracted by something else going on in your life, that should be a key indicator you really need to talk to somebody.
Mhm.
No questions asked, and I don't know that everybody wants to admit that. So yes, for sure, for people to get over that hump and stay strong, I that's always my biggest concern, is how do we identify those people, or, to get them help, to get them the help they need.
Yeah.
That's and I obviously wouldn't want to talk about anybody personally, as in my role that I've had, where I've sat down with, an officer and be like, listen, you're a good officer. we have a lot invested in you, but you got something going on and you need to address it. I surely don't need to know, other than I just want to know you're getting it addressed with some professional help. I don't know, need to know who you're seeing, what you're doing, but I can see something in you that you need something. And and it's between you and that, well, however, I always tell, I work in a smaller department now from where I left from years ago, but word travels fast. So I'm like, my suggestion to anybody, whenever you're dealing with something, don't tell a soul you're doing it, to keep it private. Because I feel like if it's just people are, it's the best thing for you is if you want to keep confidentiality, just deal with your stuff privately. Don't share it with anybody because, unfortunately, as we all know, law enforcement officers do have a tendency to repeat things. And a lot of times it's in jest and it's fun and they repeat things that are not bad in nature, but we all know that sometimes things slip out that can be hurtful. So I try to tell my personnel, please refrain from doing that because if there's an old saying, if you don't have something nice to say, it's better to say nothing at all. So,
Yeah.
um, but not everybody follows that,
I think
unfortunately.
I think that thank you for the reminder that because I agree with you, just because we're saying, hey, like you need to be resilient, hey, like we need to make sure you're in the right mindset, doesn't mean you have to do that alone. And so I appreciate you talking about the fact that, maybe you are in a rut, maybe you do need to lean on other people. There are other resources for you that can help you to get on the right track, to have that mindset, to be able to be healthy and well and happy, and I think that sometimes we convince ourselves that we have to do it alone, and especially if we're stubborn, and I'm very stubborn. I can say I'm very stubborn. But also like I'm an only child and I've always done things on my own. And like I was raised in a really hard environment where I was forced to grow up really fast and I had to look out for myself and I had to learn how to survive really early. And so I have a lot of these things that I've had to kind of almost untrain myself to do because I was so used to just like being this strong, advocate for myself. And I've had to learn too that sometimes like it's not a matter of if you can do these things on your own because like we know you're strong, like we know you get through things, but like should you? Or like, could you be better if you leaned on somebody else? Could someone help you even more? Could you grow even more? Could you be even happier and healthier than you are on your own? And so I think it's a really important reminder that yes, we want you to be resilient. Yes, we want you to be happy and well and have longevity and quality of life and all these things, but it doesn't mean you have to do it alone. And I think we convince ourselves sometimes that we have to do that alone.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, learning to overcome. I mean, we're for sure, as we are a product of our environment. So at a young age, we're sponges and we absorb things that we see and hear as kids. And then as we get older, some of those become our practice and our habits. But you know, one thing we all can learn. I mean, that's as long as people are open minded to learning. But you can overcome and really anything is if you're willing to learn and accept what you're taught too. That's a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
not everybody, not everybody's willing to accept what they're taught because they question it. But and that's okay to question things. For sure. I think that's how you make questioning things make you a smarter person. But yeah, our exposures definitely define who we are. And some of those exposures are, again, challenges. And if you have those and you learn from them, some people love helping other people and some people don't love helping other people. And then there's the people that, as you say, you brought up the word stubborn. Uh, some stubborn people don't want help from anybody. They're very set in their ways and they're very dug in. And it's hard to sometimes when they're dug in and set in their ways to peel off enough layers to get to where they want to listen to you. So that's always a challenge. And I think police officers in general can be that way. It might be because of what we see and what we're exposed to. We put on that layer, and that's why I think a lot of officers get into some amazing relationships. You know, with, personal relationships. But when those relationships go south because they've allowed themselves to be vulnerable, and this is just my opinion and observations over the years, they allow themselves to become vulnerable, and when that fails, they think they fail because they don't see them being able to connect with somebody again like that, or do they even want to go there and try to do that again because they don't want to be hurt again? So these are all things that these are just my observations, and people could agree or disagree, but just the things that I've seen, and I just think that is has huge impacts on law enforcement officers, and but I always say there's always, if things don't work out in an interpersonal relationship, there's always, you can get over that. You know, time does heal, and you just have to take things, and again, try to get over those hardships and stay focused to make it over that hump. But some people, they don't, they're not focused enough to do that. So they either need help from somebody else to do that. That's probably, a good route. Obviously, getting help from others, especially family or friends, or if not professional. But all those different avenues can help somebody get through troubled times.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm
Some,
sorry.
no, you're good. Something you said earlier that I wanted to kind of ask you about, and I think it's in line with this. You said that we're better educated than we've ever been before when it comes to wellness and resources that are available. And of course, like we're having these conversations now, which I know were not a part of the conversation when, you came up, 30, almost 37 years ago. And um, a question popped up for me when you were saying this, because I agree with you 100%. I think that, I mean, I've only been in this space for like 8, 9 years. And I think that there are far more conversations and awareness and education around wellness and what are those resources when someone is struggling or maybe goes through a bad breakup. Does the organization have resources available? Are you having these conversations with your people? Are your people having conversations with each other? Are these things happening? And I think they are. I think that we are more educated and more aware now than we have been in the past. But my question for you is, do you think that we are better at action? We're better at education, but do you think that the action component, like the actual implementation of these things, is where it should be?
No, I don't. I think it, but I think if we can establish a certain kind of comfort level for those officers that need to take action, that will prompt more action to be taken. But
Mm.
I would say, we at my police department, we do wellness screenings once a year. They're mandatory. They don't involve any. I don't get any feedback from those other than just, hey, the person conducting the feedback, the clinical social worker might be like, yeah, I felt like your people were very engaging, but there's nothing, there's no talk about what individual, what was said, nothing. It's all private, confidential. We have an internal peer support team within the police department that officers can use to get, if they need some help or they want to talk about something. Again, nothing reportable, no documents kept. That's one thing. And then we also belong to a regional peer support network where they actually have a phone app that they can reach out if they need be. That also has connections to clinical social workers, clinicians that are experienced with first responders, law enforcement, or others first responders, where they have these avenues in addition to our regular employment assistance program. So the avenues are there. Do I think they're being used a lot? No. I just don't feel that the response from the feedback I'm getting, that it's not as robust as we'd like to see it. But I know it's important from a perspective that I have to have those options available. I surely don't want to be closed-minded and say that I want to do everything I can, that if somebody is dealing with some type of crisis, that they don't have an avenue to seek out. But I think, like you said, the action part, I don't think so, because I think there's still this stigmatism that, you're weak if you do that, or embarrassed. It may be an embarrassing topic. I'm not really quite sure. Um, I think, there's always these struggles related to mental health. Um, but, I know I was just reading something in Illinois. There's one of the local, the state legislators introduced a bill um, to basically, it's duty related, where officers can seek and get no questions asked, no built in within statutory authority, that they can have up to 5 days off of for mental health, like a duty related exposure to a trauma incident where they just need to take mental health time. They're allowed up to 5 days a year. In addition, it doesn't go against your benefit time or anything like that, and there can be no questions asked. I haven't read the full bill. It looks like it just got introduced very recently, but it's something that I find interesting, and also helpful in the sense that if this was imposed in statute, that, and again, it's duty related, not non-duty related. So there's kind of that's a whole separate topic of protecting, officers when it's not duty related. But I think it's a step in the right direction, where
Yeah.
officers feel that they're protected, and that it's more accepting if they're struggling with something, that they can go talk to a mental health professional and not be judged, not be criticized, not worry about being disciplined or transferred or whatever it may be. I think those are, and listen, I'll say this: the the struggles of a law enforcement officer today are not the same as it was, 30 years ago. Everything is on social media now.
Hmm.
Officers read that all the time. They read about police officers being criminally charged, lawsuits, you know, whether it's scandals and all these different things, and protests, and whatever it may be. There's just all this information out there. It comes out on a daily basis, and officers read this, and I know that adds to their anxiety and stress level. Police officers years ago never worried about, oh my gosh, if I go to work today and I get involved in an officer involved shooting, I might go to jail. Well, now they do, and that takes its toll on somebody's mental health. I surely don't want an officer second guessing and putting their life in jeopardy, if they have to make that split second decision. I also want them to make the right decision too, but I also want them. But that's important. That goes back to the topic of just being focused, because if you're not focused, you can make the wrong decision, and we want them to make the right decision. But I also don't want them walking around in the back of their mind thinking, I don't know what to do. And that hesitancy can cause them, you know, to be receive an injury themselves.
Yeah, it's a
So
safety issue. Yeah.
it's and these are split second decisions, and um, it's as much as we've seen a lot of everything captured on video. Video doesn't capture everything. So there's a lot more components to an officer use of force incident, besides just video.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that, video helps for sure, but it doesn't tell the whole story. It tells a big chunk of it, but it doesn't tell everything. And,
Yeah.
we've obviously seen that. If anybody who's followed, very high profile use of force incidents around the country with law enforcement officers, just the different incidents and the outcomes, and these are concerns, and officers know this when they go to work. And we want to keep sure, and we want to make sure that law enforcement, we're better trained than we've ever been. Our equipment's better than it's ever been. We always maintain professionalism. Um, the but if you're coming to work stressed out, we don't want that's always a concern that can cloud your judgment. So we want to make sure that we get rid of that.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember we're all human. So as much as somebody, where do you draw the line with somebody that's probably needs some assistance with some struggles they have, or the officer that just is, dealing with day-to-day struggles, but they're okay to come to work, but they still got some struggles in the back of their mind. So again, there's all this going on, and we want to be cognizant of that. And there's it's something that it's always on my mind as a chief, for sure. I want my people healthy when they come to work. I want them, like you said earlier, um, I don't want somebody waking up and not wanting to come to work. I want them to come to, I want them to wake up fresh and say, hey, I want to be at work today. Hopefully I can make a difference in, somebody's life in a positive way. But as we know, there's, the other side where we might get involved in something that's difficult.
Yeah, there's a couple things I wanted to circle back to, but one, from an organizational standpoint, what you were saying earlier is you would rather have the resources and not need them than
Correct.
not have them and need them, right? And so, of course, we want things to be utilized. And so I think having those conversations that help to break those barriers and break the stigma and become more normal will allow people to do it. But I think at the end of the day, we also have to understand that as individuals, we have to take control over our own outcomes. We have to be the ones that take action. No one else can do that for us. No one else can, they have that saying of like, you can lead a horse to water. Like, if I'm the horse in this situation, like, I have to be willing to drink the water. Like, we have
For
to
sure.
be able to take action and understand our own role when it comes to wellness. And at the end of the day, nobody else can do that for us. Like, yes, we can lean on other people, but you have to be willing to take that step for people to help
Yeah.
you. And so you said
Agreed.
this earlier that like people don't want to be embarrassed, and I agree with you. And I think it's a thing. Social conditioning is a thing. Like, we don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of our peers or leadership. But I do also believe that failure and embarrassment are necessary for growth and success. There is never, ever anything that I've done in my life that has been worthwhile that I wasn't a little bit embarrassed and that I didn't like fall on my face a couple times and, quote unquote, fail. And I think that we have to like almost, this word is going to sound so woo woo, but almost like surrender to the fact that like we know that like failure and mistakes and embarrassment, all of those things are inevitable. It's necessary. Like, we're never ever going to be perfect. As hard as we try, we're never ever going to be perfect. And we're going to have our moments of, failure or embarrassment. And that's okay. As long as we take a look at it and we ask ourselves, where's the learning opportunity? How can I grow? How can I become better? And so I think that we have to like be willing to like suck at something. We have to be willing to like fall on our face sometimes, and of course we don't want it to be like a big failure. I'm talking about like little things,
Yeah, no, I mean, there's
but
for sure, well, I mean, there's for sure acceptable failures and
right.
unacceptable failures, especially in law enforcement,
Yeah.
where, and those have changed over the years where, you know, an acceptable failure 30 years ago is an unacceptable failure now.
Mhm.
That just those has things have changed over the years. But we have to learn from our mistakes, and making mistakes not a bad thing as long as it's not a mistake that's just, and I've read a lot of different mistakes. I've heard a lot of different excuses. The one thing I think, officers, I would say, and I think it just depends on the culture of the organization, how big the department is, where the department works. Is it a big city? Is it a small department? But I think, you know, certain mistakes are more allowable depending on where they take place and what they are. Um, but I also think that, you know, we, we as a culture in law enforcement, a profession, we become less tolerant of mistakes,
Mm,
which is, you know, which could be considered to be problematic in the sense that if we don't allow people to make mistakes, um, how are people going to feel that they're going to be able to succeed in a career?
right.
So,
Yeah.
but yes, I believe that, and there's mistakes that are, can be corrected with teachable moments. Some mistakes have to be, disciplined. Some are more severe discipline depending on the department. I mean, I've talked to police departments where somebody might make a minor mistake and they're taking, 5 suspension days, where another department might be like a written reprimand or a retraining. Or so it's just I don't disagree that, we have to, people make mistakes. We're human. We're always going to make mistakes. It's just trying to gauge, where that mistake falls into, uh, you know, your organization.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think even to your point of like, even if you make a mistake that is, requires discipline, where can you learn and not make that mistake again? So, my final question, because I know we're about to run out of time here, but my final question is for that younger generation. What words of wisdom would you share with them that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Stay healthy, work out, try to eat better, make time with your family, but also be dedicated when you come to work. So I think some officers, and I think this is not abnormal where you have, you know, a certain percentage of officers come to work and they're always on the job, they're always going and getting. Then you have a group of officers that, they come to work, they do what they cover their calls, they're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're just, then there's always a very small percentage that are probably not, that need improvement, need to kind of be, whatever they need, they just need a little, kind of need to be watched, or so to speak. But that being said, and those are generally older officers. The progression of policing, in certain ways, hasn't changed with the evolution of time and seniority, different periods of your career. But younger officers, the younger generation, when I would just say, just balance your life, your personal life, and your work life. Um, but just remember this too: you don't get a good personal life without a good work life, because if you don't have a job, your personal life isn't going to be the best. So trying to find that sweet spot of having a great personal life and a great work life, that's a challenge. That's a challenge really that I would love to see everybody figure out. Um, that's something that I know if my wife was sitting next to me, she would say, "You put this job over our family for many years."
Mm.
And looking back, I probably, I should have taken more time off. I should have done things, in the earlier on in my career that I didn't do. I mean, some of it I couldn't do just because of seniority, and I was in a bigger department and had to work. Not making excuses, but put. I would definitely say I put my career first, and did I benefit from it? I like to believe I did, but there's a there. I think it's more accepting now to a personal life, work life balance is definitely something there's more acceptance of it, and I think that's a good thing. Because you have to have a good personal life to have a good work life. It's just something that, I think we've learned. I think we've learned that. And the other thing is just making sure that you don't. And for those that do like to work and work overtime, don't work too much overtime that you're so exhausted when you're, you know, for everything else in your life. Just don't overexhaust yourself. Again, kind of falls into balancing it out.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know if that's, something that,
loved it.
other chiefs have said, but it's just, I feel like I'm in a, just because this is, I retired from my other department and came here as a chief 8 years ago. And I just look at it as this is my opportunity. It's been my opportunity to kind of give back and try to, use the things that I've learned to, make life better for, my personnel in this department, and, treat them, with respect, and making sure that they're getting the guidance they need to have a successful career here, and creating opportunities. Um, that's to me, that gives me the most pleasure, actually. So, but I do appreciate very much, you reaching out to me for this podcast.
Of
It's my
course.
first podcast I've ever done, so I know my kids can't wait. They want to see the link, and I'm sure that I have no idea what they'll do with it, but it's I maybe they'll get a little bit of a dose of, my thoughts, because I do keep my work life, I mean, I keep it as separate from my family life as I can. I've always done that.
Yeah,
I think that's healthy. When I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. I mean, there's a little crossover, obviously, but
sure.
I try to do that. That's another thing I would say that, yeah, don't bring work home if you can help it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for being on here. And I'll be looking forward to getting the feedback from your kids. I'm never afraid of the feedback from you guys. I'm always afraid of the feedback from spouses and kids because they're going to be the most honest with what
Yeah,
they think. But
it's pretty funny because they'll probably, there'll be some type of, uh, comedy they'll make out of it.
Razz you a little bit.
Oh, more than a little bit.
Well, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here today.
Yeah, I hope I gave you everything you were looking for, and I appreciate it. So
Thank you.
we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.